Hey there, friends. This week, our Gospel Project story comes from John chapter 4. It's a story of Jesus and his encounter with the Samaritan woman at the well. And so if you're need a refresher on that story, Jesus is trying to travel from the regions around Jerusalem, which would have been the south of Israel, up to Galilee, which would have been in the north. And in between those two regions was the land of Samaria, which most Jews in Jesus' day would not have been caught dead walking through. There are a bunch of cultural reasons and some political reasons why practicing Jewish people would avoid Samaria. They would actually walk the long way around to avoid the whole region. But Jesus was anything but the typical person. Jesus was countercultural through and through. And so he goes straight through with his disciples. And they land in this little town about midday, and Jesus ends up at a well. And the disciples are going off to find some food and some other provisions and things like that. And Jesus runs into this woman who is drawing water from a well at the hottest part of the day. And he strikes up a conversation with her, and what we gather from the conversation is a couple of things about this woman, is that she is at the well during the hottest part of the day to avoid other women, because she probably is the focus of some gossip and some not kind words. It comes up later in Jesus' conversation with her that she has had 5 husbands and is currently living with a man who is not her husband. And in that culture, that would have been taboo. That would have been something that would not have been permitted or looked kindly upon. But they strike up a conversation about spiritual things as well. And she asks a question about where the appropriate place to worship is. And Jesus kind of responds to her and responds to some of her questions. And through the conversation, ends up revealing himself as the Messiah that she has been waiting for. And she believes, and she is so struck by her belief and by her encounter with Jesus that she runs off and tells the town, and the disciples show back up and they're like, hey, eat something and drink something. And he's like, hey, I've got food you don't know about, I've got water you don't know about. And then the crowds from the town come out, the townspeople come out to listen to Jesus teach, and then eventually they believe on their own. And then what they actually say is, initially we believed because of the woman's testimony about you, but now we believe because we've heard it and we've seen it for ourselves. There's a couple of big things we can take away from this story. This story is so rich with good takeaways for us, but a couple of big ones we can take away, not necessarily main points, but just big thoughts. One is that what Jesus teaches this woman and teaches us by extension is that it's not so much about the where we worship or the when we worship or even the how we worship necessarily. It's about the who we worship. It's about the focus of our worship. When Jesus tells her that it's not in Jerusalem or on this mountain in Samaria where you worship, but true worshipers of God worship in spirit and in truth. He's pointing to the fact that your location doesn't matter. Who you're worshiping matters. And a sub-point kind of to the whole story is Jesus' whole encounter with this woman would have been seen as odd by other people. And so this is one of those prime examples of Jesus demonstrating the fact that Jesus was someone who loved all people regardless of their background, regardless of their job, regardless of what the society would have said about them. Jesus loved people. He loved people regardless of any other qualifier. If they were a person, he loved them. And so the big ideas we were going to focus on this week, if you had little kids, we were going to focus on that simple little idea that Jesus loved everybody, that Jesus loved all people. And if you had students, what we were going to focus on is go a little deeper and say that true worshipers worship the Lord in spirit and in truth. Just getting back to the idea of it's not about your means or your modes of worship or your time or your place, but it's much more about your heart and about who you're worshiping. And some discussion questions for you this week. Number one would be, Jesus taught that, again, it's not about where you're worshiping or when you're worshiping or how you're worshiping, but it's about your heart. It's about who you're worshiping. Talk with your family about how is that relevant for our daily lives? How is that relevant for our daily lives in the midst of a global pandemic when we can't meet together? What is that nature of what true worship is speak to our current situation as the people of God? And a second question would be, what can we learn from the Samaritan woman's almost immediate response to meeting Jesus and believing that he's the Messiah. The scriptures tell us that she immediately went and found townspeople and told them, and they came. What can we learn and what can we take away and utilize from that example we have in her? I hope you're well this last Sunday of the month. If you haven't heard, we are planning to reopen in-person worship the first Sunday of June, June 7th. What we ask of you is that you would RSVP with the church office to let us know if you and your family plan to attend, so we can be making preparations for that. You can check our website, and you should have also received an email with some specific guidelines about if you should attend, how to attend, kind of what our format will look like moving forward. But we're very excited to meet back together in person. We're excited to see your faces and to sing together and to study God's Word together. So I hope you have a great week, and I hope to see you next Sunday in person.